our calendars are completely up. That takes 24,000 years. Catholic Church wants to fix itself firmly in the Age of Pisces. If you're not observing the planetary cycles, then you're dead. It's a planet that rules rebellion, upheaval. The sun is the life force. Bitcoin is the megalith for the Age of Aquarius. Megalithic structures, the pyramids, Göbekli Tepe, all of them are aligned astronomically. I'm literally just doing trigonometry. Respiratory illness pandemic in the year 2020. And he predicted that in the 1980s. Duh, this is just astrology.
So I'm here with Glass Delusions. This is episode 62. It's going to be of the Illegitimate Scholar Podcast. And we're going to talk about a few things, the Gregorian Calendar, how that's a psyop. And I'm excited. I've heard a little bit about this. And then the megalithic structures thing. You have an interesting idea about cryptocurrency related to that and just astrology in general. So what were you just telling me right before about the date?
I was going to say, during the sound check, I was saying it's May 15th, 2024, but it's probably May 1st, 2024. And it's also actually probably 2016. It's not.
Yeah, okay.
Like, we just don't know what time it is, basically, because our calendars are completely up.
And probably not to most of the people who are watching this, like, that's not going to sound crazy. I think to most people that might sound crazy, but like it seems like that's definitely a thing. We're definitely not as sure as we probably should be. But anyway, at the beginning, plug whatever you want to plug. Like you read on Substack and you're on Twitter. I like to do it at the beginning because people forget.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so on Twitter, I am at Glass Delusions, and my Substack is called Cosmographics, cosmographics.substack.com, and my Substack is mostly astrology, esoterica, any kind of stuff, information content in those themes. Most recently, I've just been putting out regular newsletters every 2 weeks during the lunations, during the new moon and the full moon, with a little bit of an astrology forecast. And I am also a consulting astrologer. So I offer private natal chart readings for clients, and you can book those right now just through Twitter. You can send me a DM on Twitter. I'm cool. Glass Delusions.
Yeah, Glass Delusions. And I'll link to your Twitter in the Substack below. I really liked these articles that you shared with me. You said the word lunations?
Lunation.
Lunation. Oh, okay. Yeah. Lunations. I get that one from the context, so I don't even have to ask. Cool. Okay. So let's get into the Gregorian calendar thing.
Yes.
Why is it a lie?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a pretty big topic, and something that has interested me for the last couple of years now. I've been studying astrology since about 2016, and in 2020, I started getting into what's called mundane astrology, which is the astrology of global events and sort of outer planet cycles, which are just larger timescale cycles, larger than the normal like monthly or yearly cycles of planets, and also starting to think about global cycles such as the astrological ages, which are 2,000-year cycles that are dictated by the precession of the equinox. And so how much context do you want to go like deep into context and give?
Well, let me ask a couple of other questions because I've got a bunch that are coming up. Why, like, in the Julian calendar, or what's the other one that's better? Is it the Julian calendar? Is that what they switched
The Julian
from?
calendar was, just what they switched from, yes.
So, like,
it went from Julian to Gregorian, yeah.
I haven't looked into this too much, but I've always just thought that the months being different numbers of days and not just based on the moon is really, really stupid. So like, why don't we just have 28-day months?
Yeah. So basically the reason for that is the orbit of the Earth is not a whole number. It's not 365 days around the sun. It's 365.25 days around the sun. And so that's a quarter of an extra day. And that's why it's when you add a day into the calendar, it's called an intercalation. And so what Pope Gregory did was he intercalated an extra day every 4 years to make up for that quarter of a day. The Julian calendar had an intercalation to take care, like they basically had a leap year every 100 years. But what happens with that is that you actually you perceive. I struggle to find the right word. I'm not sure if perceive is the right word, but you observe the precession of the equinox with the Julian calendar. So that means that in the northern hemisphere, the spring equinox, every 100 years, it moves back one day. So the precession. So in gets a little bit like in the weeds a bit, but in 1582. The equinox was happening, 1582 was the year that the Gregorian calendar was instituted. The spring equinox was happening on March 11th. And the way that Pope Gregory intercalated the leap year and the way that he set everything when he set the Gregorian calendar, he pushed the spring equinox back to March 21st. And what the leap year every 4 years does is it fixes the spring equinox at March 21st around there.
Okay.
Whereas like with the Julian calendar it just every 100 years, it just keeps moving backwards and backwards.
Oh, so eventually the spring equinox would have just been like in the prior year.
Right. Or eventually the spring equinox will be on February 20th.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
is there significance to that amount of time that it would then be on February? Okay.
Yes. There's major significance to that. And that is what the precession of the equinox designates what astrological age we are in. So when the spring equinox, and it gets a little bit confusing here, so I'm, just stop me whenever. But when the equinox is happening on March 21st, the sun has moved into the constellation of Aries. And this is going to be entertaining. My cat loves to interrupt.
No, that's great.
The sun is entering Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and the constellation that is rising on the eastern horizon at that time is the constellation of Pisces, and that's the astrological age that we're in. And all the details around that, you don't really need to we don't need to get into that because that's like super technical. Yeah. But basically February 20th, once the spring equinox moves back about a month, the sun will be in Pisces, but the constellation that is rising on the eastern horizon at that time will be Aquarius, and we will be in the age of Aquarius. So the precession of the equinox, because astrological ages are 2,000 years long, or they're approximately 2,000 years long, they're probably more like 2,400, 2,500, maybe even 2,600 years long. And that is beyond any conceivable, comprehensible human timescale. So the precession of the equinox tells us where we are in the great year. That's what we call it, the precession of the equinox in the astrological ages, how you move through all 12 zodiac signs. It's called the Great Year. And so
how long does that take?
That takes 24,000 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And so, these are huge time scales. And so the only way that we know where we're at is based on the spring equinox and the precession of it and how it moves through the zodiac. So basically the Gregorian calendar, if it's fixing the spring equinox at March 21st, thereabouts, it fixes us in the age of Pisces. And we never know when we're going to enter the age of Aquarius. That's why it was such a huge deal in the 1970s during the flourishing of pop astrology. People started realizing and it was coming to light with people's newfound interest in astrology, like, oh, we're actually due for a shift into the age of Aquarius pretty soon here, but we have no idea because the calendar got fucked up by Pope Gregory.
So let me try to guess the reason for this then.
Yeah.
So like the Pope probably doesn't want us to leave the age of Pisces because it's related with Jesus, right? Is it that simple? Yes,
it is that simple.
You can't trick nature. Like
exactly.
That's like tricking God.
Exactly. And this is the so I found out recently about this thing called meteorological spring. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's basically like the actual spring based on the weather patterns, and it's not it's not fixed to the spring equinox. It's literally just like the weather patterns itself. So the meteorological spring is more like the true spring. And as of now, it's happening at around March 1st. So we're way off. Over the last 500 or so years, we're just way off.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you say what meteorological, I can't say that word, meteorological spring is again?
It's basically how, based on the weather patterns, when spring initiates, and it's not based on the spring equinox.
Okay. How does that differ from the equinox?
It differs in the sense that it's how we measure our relationship to the sun, basically. And so the spring equinox, because again the Gregorian calendar intercalates an extra day every 4 years, that fixes how we perceive the sun's equal daylight and equal nighttime. Like that's what the equinox means. It's equal night and day. And
right.
So we are, with the leap day every 4 years, it's just basically how, without getting too technical, it's basically like how we're measuring that. Like if we're measuring it from the perspective of the earth or from the perspective of the sun. And with the Gregorian calendar, it's measuring it from the perspective of the sun. And so we say, okay, on March 20th at 5 a.m. Eastern time, the sun is giving us equal day and equal night. So therefore, that's the spring equinox. But then meteorological spring is sort of saying, well, from the Earth's perspective, we are tilting toward, the northern hemisphere is tilting toward the sun, initiating spring from our perspective.
Okay.
So it's basically like how you measure, whether it's from the sun's perspective or the Earth's perspective.
Okay. And so, but the Pope wants to measure it from the Earth's perspective, essentially.
From the sun's.
Okay. See, that goes the opposite direction than I thought at the time, like 100 years after they had, or not even, but like 50 years after they conquered the Aztecs. And I feel like sun worship is so associated with like pagan beliefs. You think it would want to go the other way?
Yeah, well, I think that it has to do with a lot of like, I mean, and this is pure speculation at this point too. I haven't gone into like too much like nitty gritty reading documents of this, but I think that the Catholicism is still also worshiping the sun. Like Catholicism, the reason why it's a political project to fix the spring, to fix us in the age of Pisces, like that's a form of sun worship. And I mean, basically like the Pope outlaws astrology, or the early Christian church like outlaws astrology, but there are still astrologers, like the cardinals, like they're trained astrologers. Also the Vatican owns one of the biggest telescopes in the world. So
yeah. And historically there would have been a lot more of this stuff like in the Catholic Church and Jesuit priests, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll give you no, go ahead.
I think my point in saying all of that was, it's still like sun worship, but very veiled through the lens of the Age of Pisces, through the lens of this messianic savior, which is the Piscean archetype.
Got it. Right. Okay. So I'm going to give you a break from talking. I want to hear more of what you're saying, but I'll give you a break because you've been just going off. So is that really true? Did the Pope actually do that for that reason? Was he even aware of the ages? I mean, he was aware of the ages, right?
He was absolutely aware of the ages, yes. And because astrology was, it wasn't outlawed in the church until several hundred years after the church was even founded. Now, you're not going to find, this is my sort of argument and thesis. You're not going to find any official story saying that that's why. I mean, the official story as to why the Gregorian calendar was instituted is so that we can, so that we don't lose a day, is what they're saying. Like they were saying that the Julian calendar was inefficient because we were losing a day and the spring equinox was being pushed back every 100 or so years. So that's the official story, but it's a political, like you can put, my argument is putting clues together basically and saying that like we have no idea where we are in space because the Catholic Church wants to fix itself firmly in the Age of Pisces.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me personally, you have no trouble convincing me of this because I study primitive and ancient cultures all the time. So I always say primitive, and then I always put a disclaimer on it that primitive doesn't mean blah, blah. Like, people have heard me say this before, so I don't want to repeat the whole thing, but
sure,
like
yeah.
primitive in a lack of technology sense, not that it's not a value judgment is my point. But the early societies, I mean, astronomy is so important to all of them. I mean, Mayans, people on, that the Mayans are my favorite, one of my favorites to study. Like the Mayan calendrical system, it's really purposeful. It really helps with the cultivation of maize, which is like the center of life. And there are calendar systems everywhere in all human societies, and they really, really matter a lot. And also, looking up to the stars is something that humans have done forever and is very, very important to a lot of primitive and early cultures. So it's only not as important today because of all the technology we have that brings us farther away from that, and then the light pollution and the we get layers and layers away from sun worship. So I also wanted to touch on sun worship because sun worship is like very, very basic towards, like, it's one of the most basic beliefs that you can have. And I mean, the Catholic Church, like Christianity in general, all these belief systems, they grow out of other belief systems, and then those belief systems grew out of other earlier belief systems. It's like with language or with political, socially constructed organizations, that they grow out of each other. Like you have the Republic that grows out of the Roman kingdom, and then you have the Empire that grows out of the Republic, and they all have like traces of the old one. And sometimes it's not even, there's no explicit like break where it stops being the Republic and starts being the emperorship, because he was known as, first citizen. But I digress. The point is that somewhere deep back beyond Christianity, like thousands and thousands of years into prehistory, you absolutely had people that likely worshipped the sun or worshipped these natural cycles that brought them life. I mean, if you look at early Christian texts as well, I mean, people here are probably, some of these people have read the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, which at the very least is a really interesting book.
Yeah.
But the motifs, the themes in that book about what it discusses, is that's probably what people are most familiar with, is these metaphors in nature of the sun giving life and of water fertilizing the earth, and how the earth is like a womb, and then the rain is like semen, and these types of things, which fertilizes the earth and grows new things, like a new human grows. And so that's all to say that that sun worship would at somewhere be involved, very likely in early Christian, like prehistory. We're talking about like you'd have to go way back, like before Judaism, way before Judaism. Light pollution literally is a cause of atheism today. Yeah, we could.
Yeah, that's true.
There's definitely some arguments there. Light pollution is a cause of atheism. I say, yeah, you said a cause, so it's not the only one, obviously, but yeah. And then is that John Allegro? I think so. I think it is. Who wrote that?
Yes, it is.
Was there anything I said that you wanted to say anything on?
I think that I'll just comment. Yeah, I also love the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. But if you're not observing the planetary cycles, then you're dead. Because if you are planting your crops at a time if you're planting your crops like during the fall equinox, when your hemisphere is moving away from the sun, then you're not going to get anything. And if you're planting during the height of summer, it's also going to be too late. Like if you aren't, and then similarly, if you're not observing lunar cycles where like the Sol lunar calendar basically tells you when there's increased animal activity, like you also can't hunt game without observing the lunar cycles.
Oh, wow.
And you can't you need to know when the tides are going to be high, and you measure that through the lunar cycles as well. So like if you're not observing the movement of the planets, you're not surviving. And that's where that to me, that's where that sort of worship comes from. I mean, that's like the original kind of deduction that gave way to the scientific method, comes from actually kind of a logic of divination. There's a really interesting book called, and I'm not going to remember the author, but it's called The Role of the Sign in Antiquity. And it's in classical antiquity. And it's basically talking about, it's like a semiosis analysis of classical antiquity and how pictorial language sort of gave way to deductive logic, basically, but that it was used for divining. So, you would you would just first of all set up patterns between your world and what was going on, like with the planetary cycles, and then like measure what was going on during these planetary cycles. And then you would deduce like, okay, we can, using math, using geometry, trigonometry, we know when this exact pattern is going to happen again. So therefore we're going to divine or predict what's going to happen based on that. Okay. So yeah, I think that it just comes from the fact that when the sun is close to your hemisphere, you have more life, your crops are growing. That is deductive logic. And you worship that because you worship that cycle so that it maintains itself. In the primitive logic, it maintains itself, but then it sort of extrapolates out from there. Then you're looking at, the closest star, the star that's closest to the sun, that seems like it's the page boy to the sun. That seems like it's the communicator, the messenger to the sun. So therefore they name it Mercury. And the next star that is closest is beautiful. It's this beautiful morning star that is pink, and its orbit makes this floral petal pattern. When we track its orbit, that must be the planet of love and beauty. It's Venus, et cetera, et cetera. Mars is red, fiery. Yeah.
Yeah. What's Saturn?
Saturn's so interesting, because Saturn is the end. That's the final planet that we can see with the naked eye. So there's a huge difference between Hellenistic astrology and modern astrology. Hellenistic astrology just uses the planets that are visible. So the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Okay. And of course the sun. And so Saturn is actually the coldest planet because it's the gatekeeper to the end of the universe, the end of the visible universe.
Is that where like worship of Saturn comes from in the Black Cube and all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some really crazy, alternative history stuff with Saturn from Immanuel Velikovsky and then David Talbot, who, like they're getting into like magnetic pole shifts and stuff, and thinking that Saturn played a more prominent role in the universe, like thousands and thousands of years ago, kind of thing. So it gets Saturn stuff. The Saturn lore gets really intense and really crazy. But in the context of just simple Hellenistic astrology, Saturn is the coldest planet. It's at the edge of the universe. It's the gatekeeper. And Saturn's Greek name is Kronos. So Kronos is the god of time. So he is the keeper. He's like sort of the glue that holds everything together because he's at the outer edge. And then Jupiter is a giant planet. It's very, very visible. So that's why he's Zeus and why he's like the king of the sky kind of thing.
And Jupiter he also has the Greek version of Zeus.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And he has 16 moons. So he has like his own little orbit, his own little like page boy system kind of thing. So that's also why he's a big king.
This is awesome. I did 24 minutes in and I have so much information. So we're live right now just on the Patreon. If you want to get on that, it's $2 a month. I'll do more of these live if people want them. I got one question. So please ask Glass Delusions if she is aware of Michael Heiser's research on Revelation 12 and astrology in the Bible. HBD James Kennedy.
No, I'm not. I will have to make a note of that and look into that.
He knows some stuff about this. I don't. I know very little about this. This is awesome. There's so many directions that I could take this. Graham Hancock. Are you familiar with Graham Hancock?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Do you? Yeah. I mean, you like him then?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I think he's great. Love him.
Yeah, I like him a lot as well. I don't agree with everything that he says, and people who listen know that I've criticized certain ideas. Gunong Padong is BS. I keep telling you guys that it's BS. Unit 4 is not the old 26,001. There's nothing human about that. At least there's nothing human they've showed. But the pole shift thing reminds me of stuff that Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson have said. Mm-hmm. So is there any relation in the stuff that you're talking about to both the pole shifts? Okay, so I guess I have three things to say, and there's two parts, and then another question on its own. The pole shifts, is this something that happens gradually? I've also heard ideas that the pole shift happens suddenly, and there's some evidence for that in relation to the flood myth. And then what about the younger dry ass impact theory?
Yeah, so I think with both of those, the pole shift, it seems like that's a sudden thing. And there's actually a really interesting, there's an interesting book by, I see it in my stack over there. That's what I'm looking. Barbara Handclough, and it's called Catastrophobia. So it's a really, really good book talking about the pole shift, and basically that it was so sudden that it was a catastrophe. And her argument, I'm not sure yet if I fully agree with it. It seems like there's some holes in it, but her argument is basically that sun worship, cycle worship, and the way that we interface with the planets is basically like a trauma response to the pole shift, and sort of well, this catastrophe happened because we weren't properly observing the cycles, kind of thing. And so this is kind of like our anxiety coming through. I don't know that I believe that, but that's a really good book talking about how the pole shifts are sudden, and they're unpredictable. There's some kind of crazy theories out there that it could be something like a giant solar storm, like what we experienced last weekend, like a really giant solar storm that just wipes everything out and just shifts everything in everybody's orbit, because the sun is so affected, and the sun has these crazy, the sun's gravity field is what is keeping everything in this perfect orbit. So if something goes out with the sun very suddenly and very chaotically and not according to any cycle, the pole shift thing is sudden, and we can't actually predict that based on any kind of math or whatever. Okay. The younger Dryas impact, the thing about that is that I think is interesting is that's pretty much accepted, right? In geology,
yeah. Which during, I don't know if you watched the whole Flint Dibble Graham Hancock thing. I was freaking out about it. I live streamed the whole thing, and I was posting all about it and calling Flint Dibble the scumbag that he is. I've also he has everybody blocked that disagrees with him, but he has me personally blocked, and he's personally lied about me in public. I hate that guy. But yeah, he was equating the Dryas impact theory with other theories, and a lot of people that don't know just take him at his word, because Graham was off in that one, but a little bit, probably because he's been being harassed by everybody and slandered for the last year of his life. But the younger Dryas impact theory, I say impact theory just like I would say the theory of gravity. It's obviously it's not as accepted as gravity, but it seems there is heavy scientific debate on it, but it seems like the younger Dryas impact theory is probably the best one. Well, in that case, it's not like there's an alternative. It's just that probably happened. There are way worse scientific theories that come out that have much less basis that get accepted. And so part of that's ideological. We talk about that all the time. Sorry if I'm distracting you. I'm screwing with my camera. I'm getting a new setup. Let's talk about that solar storm last week. What Okay, your eyes lit up on that one. So yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to say about that.
I mean, my eyes lit up just because I was like crying the whole time. Like everybody, everybody talks about how it was just destabilizing their moods and stuff. And it does have, I mean, CME, like the geomagnetic field being affected does have adverse physiological effects, just like a lot of migraines, headaches, mood swings, things like that. And it's an interesting cosmological, it's of great cosmological significance, but a solar storm in itself doesn't have astrological significance because, again, it's not predictable on any kind of extrapolative formula. So it's like these solar storms happen, and in we can measure them about 5 weeks out or whatever, or like we can probably measure them a few weeks out before they're going to happen, or a few months out, but they're not happening with any cyclical regularity, so it's not astrologically significant.
Right. Okay.
What was interesting about this one, however, is it was happening when the sun was conjunct Uranus, and that is a pretty major conjunction. It happens about yearly-ish, but it's a pretty big deal. Uranus is an outer planet. It's a planet that rules rebellion, upheaval, surprises, unexpected events. It also rules technology. And so when the sun comes into conjunction with it, when it's aligned, they were at the same degree in the sign of Taurus. I believe it was 23 degrees. That can create a lot of... that just amplifies when the sun is conjunct a planet. The sun is the life force of the universe, of our universe, our solar system. So it amplifies the effects of Uranus. It amplifies these effects of upheaval and surprises, unexpected things happening. And in the sign of Taurus is the sign of our material earth and our relationship to the earth, a relationship to what we reap from the earth. So I just thought that it was an interesting little, when astrologers are looking to the year ahead, they'll say like, oh, and on this day is going to be the Sun Uranus conjunction. So we should expect, and it's going to be in the sign of Taurus. So we should expect strange, funky weather patterns happening. And that, sure enough, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Crazy weather pattern. But
yeah, and I should say also that like magnetic fields screwing with people's heads is pretty established science as well. It's not like this is a quack theory.
Yeah, it's that is established. I mean, it's because everything about our atmosphere and our distance from the sun and the protective layer between us and the UV rays, like that allows us to have the life that we have. It's not like we would have a similar life on Mars or on Mercury, things like that. Like the magnetic fields and how we interface with the energy, like the UV energy of the sun, is very it has to be just right for us to have this life. So when it's disrupted, we have physiological side effects.
Yeah. Okay. Before I go on to something else and ask you, is there anything else you wanted to say about anything we've talked about?
I think that I'm trying to think about the Gregorian calendar, if we've like I'm trying to think if we've like wrapped that up fully.
Oh, I don't think so.
But I think that what I want to drive home is that each astrological age, the way that we understand the astrological ages and the precession of the equinox, is where we are, the constellation that we're facing when we are, the constellation that is being projected onto the earth when we are entering a new astrological year, which is on the spring equinox. Like, the idea is that zodiac sign and all of its archetypes, all of the things that it signifies, all of its symbols, those are being projected onto us on earth. And so what you have is, and you can see this when you're looking at like Mithraic bull cults and all sorts of different like historical cycles, all sorts of different archetypes that people are worshiping. You really see the astrological age showing through during that age. And so when you have the Age of Pisces, projecting onto the earth, the Piscean archetype is this savior archetype, a messianic singular person who will save humanity, basically. And so that allows an institution like the church like the Catholic Church to flourish, because the Catholic Church is embodying this astrological age, but also monotheistic religion in general is embodying this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Islam is very Piscean because Muhammad is this one singular prophet who is coming down to spread the good news. Buddhism is quite Piscean because the Buddha has a similar Christian theme where he's not born. Buddha is not like born of a normal gestation. He's like born under a tree, I think. I'm not well versed in Buddhist thought.
I don't know about his birth, but he was supposed to have spent like 40 years sitting under a tree or something.
Yeah, and then he also and it's just, the point is that it's this archetype of a singular figure who will save humanity by telling them how they live their life, and very passive and sensitive, and also very spiritual in general. I mean, I think that the other thing too is that not every astrological age has to translate into a religion specifically. The age of Pisces is religiosity. Pisces in the zodiac is the 12th house, the house of consciousness and subconsciousness and spirituality and higher transcendence. So religion itself is going to flourish as well. It's not just a Christian and Christianity that is meant to flourish. Although what the Vatican did is they really harnessed. I mean, what I believe is that the Catholic Church is the institution that most competently harnessed the energy of the Age of Pisces, and that's why they were able to have global power, and that's why and they understood that he who holds the calendar holds the power of over the whole globe. And so the reason why the Age of Aquarius then would be threatening to a pope, the pope of the Vatican, the Christian Church, is because the Age of Aquarius is a new astrological age. It's it's not religious at all. Aquarius as an archetype is about networks. It's about technology. It's about I hesitate to say egalitarianism, because one thing that really, my biggest pet peeve in astrology and pop astrology is when people say that like this Aquarius is the sign of like social justice, humanitarianism. That's not the case at all. But that's not the case at all. Aquarius is just about like it's about how you are an individual within a network, a larger network of people. It's sort of like the plane of immanence is the term that Gilles Deleuze uses. But it's no longer about a singular messianic figure, and the Age of Aquarius is also not about spirituality necessarily either. Aquarius is about communities and like systems and rhizomatic systems. So it's a dissolution of everything that the church stands for, sort of. So
when you said the Age of Pisces, or the Pisces is the 12th house, does that mean we're like at the end of the 24,000 year cycle then?
Well, yes and no, because it's a precession, so we're moving backwards through the zodiac. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that also can get into a little like technical, sticky topics, just because there's also like contention around where do you even orient the zodiac. Like the tropical zodiac system is oriented where Aries is the first. But that's the tropical. There's the sidereal zodiac is something that's totally different, that is Vedic or East Indian. And so everything, once again, everything is just all off. Everything about our dating systems and our calendrical systems is just completely off, and we're kind of groping in the dark. It's just a matter of like how many people are groping to one idea, and does that equal consensus, things like that. But in any case, to answer your question directly, we were sort of at the like hinge or like great year turnover 2,000 years ago when the Age of Pisces started, because we were going from Aries into the 12th house.
Okay. So Aries is the first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Aries is the first, and then 12th is the one that Pisces, that's the one that we're in right now. And then there's not agreement on when Pisces ends then?
Not really. There's most people think that it's around the year 2140, which
2140.
if you're a Bitcoiner, your alarm bells are going off.
Why? Okay, and why is that?
That's the final. Oh, I guess we haven't even touched that in the.
No, we haven't. I wanted to like push it back a little bit because you started talking about networks, and then I want to use that to go into Bitcoin, but I want to get a couple other things straight first.
I just want to say 20, and we can leave this when we talk about Bitcoin, but the year 2140 is the final distribution of all 21 million coins.
Okay, that makes sense.
The Age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that there for now.
Good Lord. Yeah, I bet the CIA did that on purpose. Okay. Yeah, and I say that because there is a theory that the CIA or intelligence communities created Bitcoin. I don't know if that's true, but okay. So we were in so 20, this is such an interesting number to me because you said like 2,400 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that exact or approximate?
It's approximate.
Because no, go ahead.
Well, it's approximate based on because the fact that we don't know, like the Julian calendar was also manipulating the precession of the equinox because the Julian calendar also intercalated every 100 years, and so like you move the spring equinox back one day per 100 years, and so like I'm not really sure the logic behind that or the reasoning behind that either, and so like we just don't know. We don't know exactly. We're just sort of thinking about the fact that it takes 2,000 years. They're measuring the Earth's wobble on its axis, basically, because that's what's causing the precession of the equinox.
So if I think back 2,400 years, going back from 2140, also I just have to put this country. The Age of Aquarius is when the Puritan world empire crushes feminism forever. That should give you a little bit of a picture of my 96% male audience. But that's why you're here. So
I need a woman.
Yeah. No, that was it. I mean, I posted on Twitter, like I've had a couple, I've had one woman on the podcast, not all 62 of my episodes. Most of them have been solo episodes, but I had one woman on the podcast near the beginning. And then I like had a couple planned and I like couldn't like they just didn't happen. And then I was basically like, I care about diversity, real diversity, because I want to hear different perspectives. So, like, yeah, I want to have women on, not for the sake of having women on, but
exactly.
There's plenty of great guests. There's a lot of them, but I want to have a varied point of view. So that means varied in like political ideology and content, but also demographic information like that. Maybe someday I'll get a black guy on. I've reached out to a couple hoteps, but I got to find one. Okay, so the Age of Aquarius is where we're going, but okay, 2,400 years. If you take 2,400 years and you go back from 2140, it puts you at about the 3rd century BC. So like the 200s BC. And I was noticing something about world history at around that time. Like you have Akhenaten try to institute monotheism in like a few hundred years before in dynastic Egypt. That doesn't work. But in the 200s BC, you have like the Roman Empire or the Roman kingdom is getting started, but you have the Chinese Empire basically starting. Qing Shi Huangdi is around 220 BC, and there was one other as well. So this, like, to me seems like a lot of the start of autocratic systems, and so that's like autocratic, like single ruler systems. So that's very interesting that date almost entirely perfectly lines up.
Yeah.
And then Aries. what was the Age of Aries? Like, what's that? That's the one that was right before us. So what is that?
The Age of Aries is the sign of war. It's the sign of aggression, and yeah, because the ruler of Aries is Mars. And so it is about conflict, conquering, and basically putting yourself, like, it's a very individual sign. Since it's the first sign of the zodiac, it's about the ego and the I statements. It's the I am statement of the zodiac. And so it is about imperial power, imperial conquering. And so, yeah, during the Age of Aries,
it also like coincides with the Bronze Age.
Yes.
Gosh, yeah. You're blowing my mind here, but sorry, continue.
And yeah, and just thinking about like the Iliad, the Odyssey, Peloponnesian Wars, very Aries.
Yeah, like heroic warfare type of thing, rather than, which I think is superior, especially when you have, like, you know, there's two armies and only one guy has to die, so these armies don't fight each other, which I think is pretty good, to not have the whole armies fight and just to decide it like that. Gosh, that is so interesting. Okay, yeah. I want to talk about the networks, but what was right before Aries?
Right before Aries was Taurus, which is the bull cult era. Taurus is the sign of the bull, and it's the sign, and it's agrarian. Taurus is about the value and the material that we get from tilling the land and working with the land. So, yeah, you have. I mean, it.
Oh
yes.
My God! Come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything, like all of, like, thousands of years of human history is aligned with the astrological ages. It is undeniable, and that's why it feels so obvious to me, at least, that Pope Gregory, or just the institution of the Vatican, wants to fix us in the Age of Pisces, to fix the power of the Catholic Church.
All right. Well, Big Yehuda is going to disagree with you on that one, but that's okay. We're allowed to have disagreements here. Yeah, single combat is extremely civilized. It's way more civilized than sending drones to murder random people. Yeah, you know, I'm with you. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, but Bitcoin, when you had an article, maybe I should pull that up, but the megalithic structures, and this was a very interesting idea that you had. I think people are really going to like that. Where, can you just, in your own words, explain what I'm talking about? I shouldn't even try.
Yeah. Yeah, so the article that he's referring to is called Megaliths for the New Age on my Substack, and it's basically the argument is that Bitcoin is the megalith for the Age of Aquarius. And what do we mean by that? First of all, what is a megalith? And when I say Bitcoin is a megalith, I'm using that loosely. A megalith is a giant rock, giant stone structures that orient us in time. Megalithic structures such as the pyramids, such as Göbekli Tepe, all of them are aligned astronomically and astrologically as well. And they're timekeeping devices. The pyramids are aligned to let us know what, like, just where we are in, like, during the winter solstice and the summer solstice. All of these megaliths also have very specific shadow patterns during the solstices. And so if you, when you're casting a shadow, when you're using a designed structure to use the light of the sun to cast a shadow and let you know what time it is, it's orienting you in time. And sundials orient you in daylight, like the 24 hours in a day. Sundials orient you there, but megalithic structures orient you in the seasons. And my argument also goes a little bit further, that megaliths orient us for astrological ages, because again, astrological ages being 2,400 years long, that's way beyond a human time scale. So you need these monuments, you need timekeeping devices that are going to outlast your generation and your, like, 2 or 3 subsequent generations, so that you have something that is orienting you and telling you the time. Basically, like, the people who are constructing the megaliths are saying, like, calendar systems are going to get really fucked up, and technology will accelerate over the course of 2,000 years. So we have to have these giant monuments, these giant sundials, basically, to tell us where we are in the great year, in these 2,000-year cycles and seasons. So Bitcoin is a megalith, is arguing that because Bitcoin is a timekeeping device, I mean, it just is with the way that it was programmed, and like this, the halving cycles happening every 4 years, etc. And the fact that it's going to take, what was it, 2009 is when the Genesis block got minted, and then you have up until 2140.
But yeah.
You have the no, it was January 3rd, 2009.
Okay, I believe
I've studied the Bitcoin natal chart, the Bitcoin birth chart, too much.
No, you're right. Yeah, I just confirmed that. It is 2009. I don't know why I thought 2007.
And
I
so
had that in
you
my head
have
this whole time, so I'm glad we said that.
You have this 2009 to 2140 like span of time where all of the coins are getting issued, but then like you're forever, like it's a new clock basically, and so it already is programmed to outlast a couple a generation of people. And so and the thesis, and it probably sounds a little, I don't know how wacko it sounds, but the thesis is basically that like Bitcoin is about systems, it's about the network, it's about the nodes in the network verifying. This is also, I remember now a lot of stuff is coming back to me when I was writing Bitcoin is a megalith, because there's just so much crazy. Okay, so Bitcoin is about.
Here, I'll share it on the screen for both you and also the people that are watching, not listening. If you're listening, get on the YouTube. There's other stuff there as well.
But essentially, Bitcoin is about systems. It's about Bitcoin works because there are nodes in a network that are verifying the math equations that then mine new blocks every 10 minutes or whatever it is. Right now it's about every 10 minutes. And so it's incredibly Aquarian. It's and it is kind of this monument that is Aquarian. So it kind of like, it naturally is fitting into this megalithic, a sort of metaphysical megalith, that is orienting us in our astrological age. And what's crazy is the year 2140, like when all of the 21 million coins are going to be distributed, just happens to be the year that most astrologers agree is the start of the Age of Aquarius. Like this seems more and more like a monument that is orienting us in the Age of Aquarius.
Oh, like someone did plan it around that date.
Yes.
Like people thought about that date way prior to 2009, right?
Yeah, people have been speculating when the start of the Age of Aquarius is, and they've been doing, they've been speculating based on archaeological records, things like that, and based on other celestial alignments that happen during when we shift. And so yeah, it's that 2140 was an agreed upon year as the start of the Age of Aquarius prior to when Bitcoin was programmed.
Wow.
So yeah, and then the other thing too is that like, so I mentioned a few minutes ago about Aries being the I am statement of the zodiac. All of the zodiac signs have an I statement. It's supposed to represent the journey through life. Aries is I am, Taurus is I have, Gemini is I think, etc., etc. Libra is I love, things like that. Pisces is I believe, because it's this 12th house higher transcendent belief system, I believe. And Aquarius is let me look it up because I want to
remember all of them. Yeah.
Well, but this one is because this is important. Because and you'll see why. I don't know if you in the Bitcoin community, if you've heard the don't trust verify.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah. So Bitcoin is don't trust verify, don't verify the equation before you mine the next block, kind of thing. And basically, Pisces is translated into either I believe or I trust, and Aquarius is I know. So you're going from don't trust, verify, as you're going from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. So there's all sorts of like really esoteric astrological symbols that are embedded into Bitcoin that no Bitcoiner knows, because no Bitcoiner is an astrologer except for me and like 2 other people on this planet.
Sweet. Wow.
So it's all there. It's there. I mean, yeah. So on the screen now, you can see the serpent mound. Like when they align it to the
serpent mound, like the Mississippi River serpent mound.
Yeah.
What the hell? Okay.
It's aligned with it's astrologically aligned with the solstices. And so it's sort of like when archaeologists are looking at, when they're mapping the astrological alignment with a monument such as Serpent Mound or such as the pyramids, it's the same kind of like crazy realization that we have when we realize that there are celestial alignments with Bitcoin. So that's why we say, and I say we, I'm talking about me and my collaborator.
So there's 2 and you know the other one. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
You're going to find someone else out there and it's going to be like a match made in heaven.
Yeah, for sure. But my collaborator who co-wrote this with me, I mean, we published it on my Substack, but he and I organized a Bitcoin astrology conference with a few other people at the Bitcoin conference last year in Miami. Just like get this stuff out there. But in any case, like we realized that there are celestial alignments to the program of Bitcoin. And that's why we were like, Bitcoin is the megalith. It is the megalith that orients us in the age of Aquarius. When all of the blocks have been mined and we have reached final issuance, although that's on a technicality, that's a little bit wrong because Bitcoin will will forever be going through halvings, and like the amount of coin that gets distributed will just like diminish forever.
But it's going to be all from the taxes on the coin rather than from new Bitcoin being minted after that, which is a non-arbitrary marker. So it totally.
Yeah. So that is the alignment. It was surprising. It was crazy. And my collaborator is a Bitcoin developer and I was the astrologer. And so only the 2 of us could really like figure this out. But then the interesting thing too is that like when we were organizing this, we were organizing it with one of our other partners who is also very into astrology. And she was working with Casey Rodermore, who is the developer who developed the ordinals protocol on Bitcoin, which allows you to, it's ordinal inscriptions is what it's called, which allows you to inscribe media on individual Satoshis. And so that is sort of like, the inscriptions are sort of like the hieroglyphs or the graffiti, like on a giant megalith.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Jeez. All right. I'll pull this down for now. That's, wow. Yeah, you're blowing my mind here.
My main argument is that it's a political project, and that's why it's a psyop. It's meant to anchor us in the age of Pisces.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Good luck with trying to trick nature. That's not going to work. I don't care who you
exactly. And the thing too is that like there's many people who are very hysterical about climate change. You know, they'll say they will say in alarm that like, oh, the migration patterns are a month early, or crops are coming in a month early. And it's like, well, yeah, because the true equinox is happening a month early. Like we're 3 weeks off.
Yeah.
We literally don't know. Your calendar is wrong. So yeah.
But like
just a lot of implications.
Do we know where we are on the Gregorian calendar?
What do you mean where we are?
Like, do we still have like if we were still using the Gregorian calendar, do we know like what day it is on the Gregorian calendar or date?
Yeah. I mean, because we've been following it. But what happened when the Gregorian calendar was instituted? So he announced that he was instituting this in 1582. he and he basically said, like, in October of 1582, it was everybody woke up on October 1st, and it was suddenly October 14th, and it was sort of like this decree from the church where it was like, okay, now we're 2 weeks ahead because we're like starting this new calendrical system. People revolted. I mean, it was throughout the Christian empire, or the Catholic empire, that they had to do this, but the rest of Europe revolted. The only people who are the stalwarts of this, I have a friend on Twitter who's like, he's always saying, he's like, Glass, it's you and like 3 bishops in Serbia who are fighting this fight, because it's the Orthodox Christian Church is still like, they're still 2 weeks behind. I mean, that's why Eastern Orthodox Easter is 2 weeks later, and like Orthodox Christmas is 2 weeks later. It's on January 6th or whatever, January 12th, whenever it is. And so, yeah, it really is me and 3 Serbian priests. Anyway,
that's hilarious.
So basically, like, the Gregorian calendar, like, they reset everything. So we are where we are in the Gregorian system, but it was reset. The interesting thing too, that is like another.
Oh, I'm sorry. On the Julian calendar is what I meant to ask.
On the Julian calendar.
Gregorian. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's why it didn't make any sense.
Yeah. Sort of yes and no. I mean, I think that the Eastern Orthodox Church calendar is the closest thing that we have to the Julian calendar. And it's interesting but like, that's also a totally different like dating system, because their months were different. Like it's very difficult to translate how we measure monthly time.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, it's even, and that's the thing with Orthodox Christmas being on January 6th. It's like, it technically is January 6th, but like, even the Orthodox calendar is like it's not January, like, isn't the first month. It's like the 13th. Okay. You know, like, you even get into these, like, I mean, it's whole paradigms. Calendrical systems are whole paradigms, and so it's difficult to translate. So we kind of know where we are in the Julian calendar, but we also kind of don't, because it fell away.
Okay.
When the Gregorian calendar reset everything. The interesting thing, this is just like slightly tangential, but what's crazy, and I still need to do a lot more research on this myself, just to like, I would have to read up on a lot of like early Christian church councils, but in the 1580s, as I said, the spring equinox was currently happening in the Northern Hemisphere on around March 11th. And the reason why they chose to skip forward 2 weeks to fix the spring equinox on March 21st is because that in the year 325 AD, that's when the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere was happening on March 21st. What was happening in 325 AD? That was the Council of Nicaea in the early Christian church. That was a major formation for the early Christian church. And a huge part of the church's identity as an institution comes together during the Council of Nicaea. And so it's interesting. What I need to explore, what the next phase of this research project is for me, is why is it important for the Gregorian calendar? Why is it important for that Pope Gregory's reign to put us back in the Council of Nicaea? Like, what was important about the formation of the early Christian church at that time that we need to fix? Because why didn't he just fix the spring equinox on March 11th, because that's when it was in 1582? Why did we have to skip ahead 14 days?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That was a lot of dense information, and I'm going to ask some basic questions. There were no popes until 493. I mean, they considered the earlier, how did it count? It was like just the Bishop of Rome or whatever. Right.
It's an imperial title. Like, the papacy is not formalized in 493, but there were still Vatican councils, and you don't call it the Vatican, but there were early Christian church councils that are laying down formations of the Catholic Church. Co-equal bishops. So like a coalition. Yeah.
Yeah, the council. Yeah. Oh, my video went weird for a second. Okay. Yeah, and also something I just want to share for the listeners. Sounds like the Pope was just trying to do a rules exploit to stop the Warhammer 40k Kali Yuga hordes. I don't play this game, but it sounds cool. Looks like Game Workshop patched it, considering things are crumbling right now. Yeah, that makes that makes sense. The Julian calendar had 13 months, right?
I believe so. I mean, the thing is that that's based on the lunations, the full moons, and how many full moons there are within the Earth's orbit around the sun. And that's actually fluctuating. So sometimes there are 13 full moons, sometimes there are 12 moons in the Earth's orbit. So lunar calendars are also fluctuate a lot. And so I think that the Julian calendar was also trying to like affix the months as well, and that's why it turned to a solar calendar, and you're starting to measure your relationship to the sun rather than what the moon is doing, because the moon fluctuates.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. Well, that's about all of that my brain can handle, I think.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot, and there are so many tangents that you.
Yeah, we love tangents here. Don't worry about that. I like to use the term word vomit. And if people are still listening to me at this point, it's because they like it. Yeah. Okay, so on a more astrological and less dense, hopefully, topic, you mentioned something when we were talking before this about issues with toxic Aquarius men. And I'm an Aquarius, so I just like to hear what you have to say on that, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, Aquarius men just have, well, okay, so Aquarius is
You're not going to offend me, by the way, if you're worried about that. Say whatever you want. I'm not.
I'm also just trying to not offend all of my Aquarius male exes either, you know.
Got it.
It's a very emotionally detached sign. It's an air sign. So all zodiac signs have elements. They're assigned elements. And the air signs are very detached emotionally. They tend to intellectualize their feelings rather than feel them or process them. And so
Sweet.
Aquarius.
That's awesome. Okay.
And Aquarius is, so as I said, it's this sign of networks and communities, and it's also in a very sentimental and sweet way, it's the sign of friends, and it wants to be friends with everyone. It wants to find ways. Aquarius wants to find the interstitial, like, connective tissue that connects everybody together. They want everyone to be friends, but what that equals is that then you get like this very boy behavior where it's like Aquarius is gonna like fall in love and seduce someone and like get them into bed and then just be like, but we're just friends. Like that's like the typical Aquarius experience, is like you wake up the next morning in bed with an Aquarius and he's like, well, you're my really good friend, nothing more. And you're like, what the fuck?
Okay.
So
fantastic.
that's why it's toxic.
Okay, got it. And then how does that apply to women? I'm not going to say how any of that stuff relates to my own experiences in life, just because that's not what I would talk about on the podcast. But women, Aquarius women.
I think that Aquarius women are so weird. We're kind of fucked up. And I'm not.
Wait, are you an Aquarius? Okay.
I'm not an Aquarius sun. I'm a Pisces sun, but I have 3 planets in Aquarius, and that when you have 3 or more planets in a sign, that you tend to exude that sign's energy a lot more. But in any case, being detached from your emotions is a very hard energy to embody as a woman. This is also like, I mean, the only kind, and I don't actually like as a professional astrologer, I don't give a lot of credence to like sun sign stereotypes, because sun sign astrology is also a psyop. It's also meant to like discredit astrology as a practice. But anyway, so like when I say all of this, when I use stereotypical language, like it's with a grain of salt, but like the only man who is more toxic than an Aquarius male is a Pisces man, because Pisces is a very emotional, intuitive, empathic energy, and that is a really hard energy for men to embody. So you get this weird, you get a weird thing between Pisces men and Aquarius women. It's hard to be detached from your emotions that way as a woman, because a woman knows the world through her emotions and how she processes them. And so when she's over intellectualizing, she's putting everybody at arm's length. And so it can really, a lot of Aquarius women can be really, really ruthless if they're not balancing the energies of their other planets or balancing the energies of what's going on with their transits. I mean, you're not your sun sign. You are your entire natal chart, and you're also your natal chart because the planets also don't stop moving. So, Saturn is currently transiting through the sign of Pisces. And so for me, that's Saturn is interacting with my natal sun. For someone else, it could be someone who is a Libra sun, for example, but their Mars is in Pisces. Like Saturn is interacting with that. So what I'm saying is, like, you're not just your sun sign, you're your entire natal chart. And you are also how your natal chart is speaking to the current movement of the planets, like the real time movement.
Okay.
So like, that's why I say you can't take these, like, all Aquarius men are toxic. Like, you have to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Okay. Well, personally, I'm pretty toxic. So,
but yeah. And so, like, a lot of Aquarius women tend to be ruthless girl boss bitches, but
yeah. Good segue.
depends on how you're working. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That segues perfectly into talking about my Aquarius girlfriend and our relationship with each other as two Aquariuses. Yeah. So again, you're not going to offend me, but what can you say about Aquarius with Aquarius?
Well, also similarly with sun sign astrology not being great, like sun sign astrology is even worse for synastry. Synastry is the astrological compatibility between two charts,
because there's more interaction when it's between two people. There's more factors.
Yeah, there's a lot more factors, but in general, a couple with the same sun sign, like that's really fruitful and generative, because you understand each other on a very particular level, that I mean, you share that with, like, there's a ton of Aquariuses in the world, so like it's not super unique, but it's really nice to have that kind of, you almost have a telepathic energy between you two when you have the same sun sign. But in general, like, there's also a lot of other factors too, where like you might want the woman's like midheaven, or you might want the woman's sun to be the same as the man's midheaven, which is an angle in the chart. Or sometimes you want the woman's moon sign to be the same as her male partner's sun sign. Because
so what's a moon sign though?
That's where the moon was when you were born.
Oh, okay. So which one do we generally go off of?
Well, we go off of the whole. This is why pop astrology is a psyop as well.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I believe in, like, real, like, things from astronomy, and that being, like, we'll call that astrology, I guess, but, like, I don't believe the teen magazine version of this, but I understand that's not what you do.
And the teen magazine version of this is actually, like, when you're reading a horoscope, you don't go off of a planet, you go off of your ascendant sign, also known as the rising sign.
Oh, okay.
And that is a particular angle in the chart. So what happens is, and you get your ascendant by, at the time that you were born, you look to the eastern horizon and what constellation and degree was rising on the eastern horizon at the time that you were born. That's your rising sign. And so when you're looking at, and there's a whole technical explanation as to why you look at that, but when you're looking at a horoscope and you're looking at the monthly, like when you're looking at Cosmo and it's saying, like, the week ahead for Pisces, if you're a Pisces sun, it's going to be the wrong horoscope. But if you're a Pisces rising, that's the right horoscope. So what we go off of for predicting the future is our rising sign. And what we go off of when we want to analyze a personality is the whole natal chart. However, I would say that astrology, I mean, we shouldn't be using astrology to analyze personality at all. Astrology is a predictive science. It's archetypal astrology, and finding your personality archetype is secondary to the predictive or nature of astrology. that said, like we can incorporate personality analysis in astrology, and there have been astrologers who have worked on this and have attempted to do a lot of empirical experiments on this, but you go off of the whole chart, or you go off of like sometimes what's called the big three. That's become very popular in the last like 10 years. The big three is your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. And that can tell you like the fundamental elements of your personality. But if you want to read a horoscope, you got to read for your rising sign, and you need to know what time you were born.
Right. Yeah. You said this. Well, you've got me interested. Okay. So I've got a question here. Does this work consistently? I'm asking, I'm not a skeptic. So I guess, what do you mean by working consistently? Like predicting, because obviously it's not like, it's like this could be a spectrum of how well it works. Like, what does it work for? Which in your
it works for predictive, because the thing is that like
that's what he said.
When you're reading a personality, like so my consultations with individual clients, I always start the first half of the consultation is just an overview of your big three, your sun, moon, and rising. But then I really go into a lot of I look at what's called aspects, which are the angular relationships, the geometric relationships that your planets are making to each other. That tells you a little bit more about your personality. But, you know, that is so subjective. And the way that I interpret things, like I can say almost anything and and people are going to be like, yeah, that kind of hits, you know, you can fit yourself and project yourself into any kind of archetype, really, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
And so, but what is consistent is the second half of my consultations with clients is we look at the solar progressions and we look at upcoming transits. So solar progression is a type of astrology where you're looking at every day after your birth corresponds to the year of your life. So the 10th day of your life, I was born on February 20th. So March 3rd is the 10th day of my life, right? Yeah. Something like that. March 2nd or 3rd is the 10th day of my life. Depends on if it was a
leap year, actually. But yeah.
Yeah, true. March 3rd is gonna the way that the planets were aligned on March 3rd of the year that I was born aligns to how my life will be when I'm 10 years old. That's a progression.
Oh, okay.
And so what I do for a lot of my clients are they average out to about 29 years old at this point. So I'm looking at...
That's how old I am. That's interesting.
Yeah. For your solar progression, I would look at your 29th day of life. And so if you're, you're an Aquarius, but let's just say you were born on February 2nd, I would be looking at March 4th.
Yeah. Well, I was born on January 29th.
Oh, okay. So then I would look at either February 29th if it was a leap year or March 1st. I would look at the way that the planets were aligned on March 1st, the year that you were born. And then I would say and I would look at the energy of those planets and figure out like what is going on. And I would say that's how this year is going to play out for you. And that's what a solar progression is. There's a lot, It gets a lot more technical than that, but that's the gist of what it is. And then also with the transits, I'm looking at the current transiting planets and the relationship that they are making to your personal planets in your natal chart. So right now I'm looking at Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. Those are the outer planets. Sometimes I look at Saturn. If you're 29, Saturn is a really important year for you because you're going through your Saturn return. And I'm looking at the outer planets and I'm saying so a Saturn return, for example, transiting Saturn in real time today is returning to the same place where it was when you were born. So transiting Saturn is talking to your natal Saturn. Also, what's interesting is right now in this year 2024, transiting Uranus is going through the sign of Taurus, which makes a 90-degree angle to the sign of Aquarius. So transiting Uranus is making a square to a lot of your natal planets in Aquarius. And that is also affecting things. How Uranus is talking to your natal planets in Aquarius, making that 90-degree angle, that tells me something about what you're going through. And then you break it down further, where we talk about what areas of life this is pertaining to. So based on your rising sign sets up the house system, what we call the house system, which is the areas of life. There are 12 houses in our natal chart. And so if you are, for example, a Taurus rising, I don't know what rising sign you are. I have no idea. I would have to know your time of birth. But if you're a Taurus rising, like, and we're looking at Uranus, transiting Uranus, making a 90-degree angle to your planets in Aquarius, that's your first house and your 10th house interacting. And so that's your house of self, the first house, and then the house of public career and public status, making a 90-degree angle to each other, and the planets are talking. So I make predictions based on, like, okay, you're going to have some crazy going down with your public persona, and you might face a cancellation or something like that. Awesome. Pluto is also transiting Aquarius. And so, but again,
getting super popular off of that. Yeah.
That's not actually.
No, I know.
Yeah. But that's an example, hypothetical, of how I predict. And it is consistent every single time when I am talking to clients, because the thing is, it's very formulaic, the way that I'm literally just doing trigonometry. And I'm just saying, like, okay, this planet is going to be 45 degrees away from this planet in your natal chart, and it's happening in your 11th house and your 9th house. You're going to be going to school you're going to be going to school again, maybe. And I have no idea. Like, that's just what the formula says in astrology. And then when I talk to a client, they're like, oh yeah, I'm starting my MFA in 2 months. Like, it is consistent every single time.
But can you predict future historical events?
Yes.
That's a good question.
Yes. So that is mundane astrology, is predicting global events.
Right,
mundane astrology is the mundane mundial, the astrology of global events. And the one astrologer that I would recommend people looking into is Andre Barbault. I can send you his name if you want to put that in notes anywhere. But Andre Barbault predicted the 2020 pandemic. He predicted a respiratory illness pandemic in the year 2020, and he predicted that in the 1980s in a book that he published. Many astrologers across the board predicted a pandemic in 2020. We were due for one, and they understood that it was going to happen. But Andre Barbault is the most accessible author who predicted it, and that is something that I have another collaborator. We are working on what's called the metasaculum, which is basically a map of world history.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, actually, I need to send you his map, because I think you'll really like it.
Yeah, please.
And be
as
really,
soon as you can. I want to see that.
Yeah. That's based on the book The Fourth Turning, which I'm sure you've heard of.
I've heard of. I haven't read it, but
you should read it. The Fourth Turning is really, really good. It's written by I'm also trying to look at the Neil Howe and William Strauss and Howe. They are the sociologists who also named and delineated the generations, as we call them. So like Gen X, millennials, silent generation, things like that. They're the ones who instituted that system of categories. And that's a separate project, different book. But in The Fourth Turning, they're talking about another calendrical system called the saculum, which is basically a form of Roman measurement of 100 years, cycles every 100 years. That's a saculum. And how, like, within the Roman saculum, it is understood that there are seasons to a civilization, or a 100-year civilizational arc. There's the spring, which is the awakening. The summer is the high. The fall is the unraveling. And the winter is the crisis. And so during crisis time, you have war, then you have the awakening back into spring, and you have this kind of like awakening you have like a sort of renaissance, either with like material science thought or artistic experimentation. You have an awakening. The 1960s was, and like the free love generation, the free love decade was a springtime awakening. Then you have a high where everything is very abundant, you have a lot of money coming in, and then you have this unraveling, which is some sort of like catalyst that precedes the crisis or the war. And in the introduction to the fourth turning, they say they're writing it in the late 90s, I believe. I think it came out in 95 or 97. And they're writing it, and they say, like, based on looking at the America's history and like mapping that onto a saculum, we predict that there will be a financial crisis in America at around the year 2005. They were only 3 years off.
I mean,
so, like,
if you really look at it, it really started to show huge signs. And my other thing is finance, by the way, in like 2005, 2006. Yeah. And so to a lot of people, like a lot of dudes that I talked to, they're like, oh, I read the fourth turning and it like blew my mind. And I was like, okay, cool. I want to read this. And then like when I was reading the fourth turning, I was like, duh, this is just astrology. Like, what do you, like, I've been doing this for the last 8 years. I don't. Yeah, right. That makes sense. But sometimes, things have to be packaged in a certain way for certain people.
Exactly. But yeah, so I have the saculum too, this secular studies project going on that is predicting future events with accuracy.
I'm trying to remember, there was another book. So number one, there's Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, and that's Ray Dalio. He's a hedge fund manager out of Connecticut. A hedge fund, he's, as far as hedge fund managers go, which I would have a negative opinion of generally, he's pretty okay. Do you know that book? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
yeah.
How do you feel about it?
It's really great. It's really great. And we can talk more off air, but it's a really good book. And also he has a chart in there where he's talking about like the age of empires basically. And he's like, well, there's the 250-year empire age. And then within that you have an 84-year cycle. And then within that you have a 30-year cycle. And Saturn's orbit around the sun is 30 years. Uranus's orbit around the sun is 84 years, and Pluto's orbit around the sun is 250 years. So what Ray is doing is he's doing an outer planetary analysis.
Yeah, I'm sure that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Financial astrology is a huge... Financial astrology... I also just want to say this. Oh, man, there's so much to say. Financial astrology is a major discipline as well, and predicting the markets based on astrology is major. You hardly ever hear about it because hedge fund managers have the strictest NDAs on their astrologers. Their astrologers cannot say that they're doing astrology, but they are. Ray Merriman.
Is that like, do you know if that's to hide from investors, or is it just like they want to keep their trade secrets?
They want to keep, trade secrets. They want to, they want to keep their trade secrets. Ray Merriman is an amazing financial astrologer. Merriman Market Analysis is his company, and he is an incredible astrologer in general, but he's a really, really amazing financial astrologer. And he calls it geocosmic cycles. Like on his website, his product is what he's analyzing is geocosmic cycles, not astrology. But that's what he's doing. He also doesn't necessarily hide it, but he's a very forthcoming financial astrologer. And then Joan Quigley is another very famous astrologer. She was Ronald Reagan's astrologer.
Come on. What was her name?
Joan Quigley.
Joan Quigley. Wow. So that's like the father of the modern financial system, Reaganomics. That's crazy. I got to look that up. All right. I'm going to want to talk again after this. You're blowing my mind here. I'm trying. I got to remember what that other book was. But in the meantime, I'm sorry. Do you still have time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Big Yehuda, I don't know if he's kidding, but he says, will Trump win? I don't know if you can predict down to that, but will Trump win?
Yeah, actually, a lot of astrologers have predicted that he will win in 2024. They predicted that he would win in 2016 as well.
Of course. Okay.
But I think there's like with this year, there's some contention, but there are a few astrologers who have come out and said and predicted that yes, he will. I am anticipating a war time for the U.S. starting in 2026. I don't know if it'll be a kinetic war.
Okay, so the next question he asked, which is funny, is will there be collapse / civil war / famine in the next 15 years?
Yes, in 2026 is when it really pops off. What's happening is planet Uranus will enter into Gemini. Every time Uranus enters into Gemini, there is a war. So Uranus was in Gemini in the 1770s during the American Revolution. 84 years after that, Uranus was in Gemini in the 1860s, which was the Civil War. 84 years after that, Uranus was in Gemini in the 1940s, which was World War II. And
oh, God. Oh, no.
So, and so 2026 is when we get back to that point. The funny thing is, actually, this ties in perfectly. The funny thing is about that is, and this is not my observation. This comes from an astrologer called Nick Dagenbest. He's a really great astrologer on Twitter. He was going on this whole exposition about how whenever Uranus is in Gemini, there is for America, at least in American history, there is always an Aquarius man who is sort of leading these revolutions or somehow like being like acting as a leader. So George Washington was the Aquarius during the American Revolution. Abraham Lincoln was the Aquarius during the Civil War, and FDR was the Aquarius during the World War II. And so I don't know, there's no Aquarius presidential candidate. However, Alex Jones is an Aquarius.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Is there anything else? I mean, that was actually perfect that we like kind of naturally went into that. What were you going to say?
Yeah. I also like, I love talking to skeptics, but I also like, I talk so fast that I can sound a little bit aggro, but I don't, Yeah,
I don't feel that. Yeah, I'm not even like, I'm not a skeptic, by the way. I don't have that much of an opinion on it. Yeah. No, I love it.
I'm making a disclaimer about how that's the Aquarius woman in me.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, my girlfriend's a bit of a girl boss, by the way. She runs her own business. It totally works.
Nice,
yeah, girl boss in a good way. Like she's got other traits. My whole thing, not that it matters, but people like to hear about it. Like I want the women that I date to be like both and this is a contradiction, but both like, confident and like, and she's an entrepreneur. Like I love that. I'm into that, but at the same time, be like conservative and traditional, which is really, really hard to get, but she's fantastic.
Good.
And she embodies that, which is great. 'Cause it is rare to find it with both of them, especially when they're 6'1" I digress about my girlfriend. It's probably the most I've ever talked about her in an episode. Maybe it's because I'm talking to a woman. Sorry for like dumbing you down to just your gender, but it does matter in the way that we interact.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there anything else you wanted to say about, like, we naturally got into your reading of star charts because I was asking you questions. Is there anything else you want to say about that? Obviously, people can reach out to you on Twitter for that.
Yeah. I make appointments regularly. And when we talk, I accept US dollars, I accept Bitcoin, I accept e-girl, the meme token.
Shout out to e-girl. We're still doing that. Yeah, e-girl's awesome. We're waiting. They released a magazine. They're like going off on it. Got some other things coming up, another party. So just because I haven't mentioned it, because it hasn't been relevant to my cultural anthropology podcast, that's still happening. Don't worry about that. I'm still in. This still haven't sold. So
nice.
So then, is there anything else you want to plug at the end of the episode?
No, just find me on Twitter, Glass Delusions. My Substack is on my Twitter, and you can subscribe there. And I guess the one thing that I want to plug is our relationship to the stars.